one.
Oh, hi, it's Melinda from Hope When There Was None. Thank you for joining us. And today I am with Dave Hoffman. He is a pastor of my church, and that is the First Baptist Church of Lowell and also the Bible Baptist Church of Rensselaer. Yay! And he's also the Common Man's Reference Bible that I mention quite often. He is also one that can tell you more about that a little bit later. But right now we're going to dive into the subject of abuse. So what does the Bible say about abuse? So I've got a couple questions I'm going to ask them. So submission, biblical submission is a hot topic, okay? So when in a healthy relationship, there is submission for women and men, of course. So what is a normal biblical submission?
Well, if the man is always bringing up the idea of submission, that says to me he's insecure.
Okay.
And the idea of submission is addressed to the woman, the wife, not the man. So when the man brings it up, he needs to read his mail where it says, husband, love your wife. So if he does what he's supposed to do, then that would give her the confidence to submit to his ways. But still the idea, there's a fine line in there on submission and, shall we say, equality. Okay, because in 1 Corinthians 11, it says that God is the head of Christ. Christ is the head of man. Man is the head of the woman. So people will see that's a hierarchy system. And nature and life does have a hierarchy system. But Jesus Christ also said, I and my Father are one. So there's an equality. So in Ephesians 5:21, it says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. That precedes, wives, submit to your own husbands. So there is an equality between husband and wife, as there's an equality between the son and the father. And so the age-old argument is the fight between those two. So if he is operating the hierarchy properly and biblically, then she would be more comfortable in that hierarchy and voluntarily submit to it. It's like in sports. In sports, if you have a very maybe a superstar, if you have two superstars on the team, you have an alpha dog. One of them has to lower themselves voluntarily to create a good chemistry for the team. Voluntarily. Okay, if the alpha dog bullies the other one, okay, then it's not a good relationship. So if there is a hierarchy, we see the hierarchy in life, but there's also inequality. So the husband that is secure in his walk with God, he will come to his wife and ask for her wisdom and things like that. Okay, but then when she's secure in him, where he's operating in his hierarchy, she will gladly submit to keep peace in the home, hopefully that he's not a bully cramming it down her throat. Right. So that would be a healthy relationship when the husband focuses on love his wife as Christ loved the church. So the husband's mindset should be, I'm not a good husband. I'm very fortunate to have this lady, so I'm going to do the best I can to please her. And then he has a mindset or she has a mindset, I'm not the best wife, and so I want to do the best I can to please him. And in that role, both are pleasing God because they're a team trying to honor God. In 1 Corinthians 7, it talks about the one party pleasing the other party and back and forth, where unfortunately in a Gentile situation where Gentiles think you got to lord it over somebody, they will bully it to try to get a peaceful situation, but it will not be a voluntarily peaceful, loving situation. And that's where the fights will come. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That does. That makes sense.
Okay.
It does. It makes sense. I mean, even to when I was with my ex, I even had to, his idea of submission was that a woman was supposed to be seen, not heard.
Right.
Then I was also supposed to walk behind him, not with him. And if there was another man that was maybe saying hello to me, it was not right for me to do so. To say
That's because of insecurity. Plus, Gentiles have a mindset in Mark 10:42-45. Jesus said, Gentiles lord it over them. Okay, we see this. The easiest area to notice this lording it over them is in politics, where we have law enforcement. You're forced to do something, and they're going to bully you to that position. Okay, when you have a bully or a tyrant or a dictator in governmental situation, dictators tend to get assassinated. Okay, if he does what he's supposed to do and is a public servant where he has the people's best interest in mind, people will gladly yield to that. And then they'll have a normal, healthy, voluntarily peaceful relationship. But when a husband is a bully, a manipulator, or because he's insecure, that's the mindset of a Gentile, where Jesus said that not ought to be, where he said to be a good leader according to Jesus Christ is to be a servant. So you're trying to serve each other, doing the best you can to please each other.
Yes. That's the way it's supposed to be.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
It is. Now also,
and that's usually what the vows say, but how many keep their vows?
Exactly, and that won't be my next question, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get to that one too. So, but along the lines, God hates divorce.
Yeah.
Okay, so does a person have biblical grounds for that separation or that divorce?
Yeah, God does hate divorce, but God did get a divorce himself. Okay, he divorced Israel after Israel multiple times stepped out on him with Ashtoreth and Chemosh and Astarte. Eventually, it says God divorced Israel, Isaiah 50 verse 1, and then Jeremiah 3 verse 8, he wrote a bill of divorcement to Israel. So God did that. He hated the idea of it, but comes a time where things get so unscriptural, you try to make the best of a bad situation. So if there's children involved, okay, and it's harming the children, where the goal in a marriage, according to 1 Corinthians, is to have peace, security. Okay, if that's not being allowed and a person doesn't see any hope of change, then they got to seek their God and then ask him for clear direction what to do. So each situation is a little bit different. And if let's say some folks say that in every divorce, both parties are wrong. Well, I don't agree with that, because God divorced Israel. You're not going to convince me that God did wrong. And then you have Hosea, where God told Hosea to marry a loose woman, Gomer. What a name for a wife, Gomer. Shazam. And then he had 3 kids by her, but then she whored around, and he tried to get the kids to beg her to come back. Well, then she took off, and then he got remarried. And then God had him write, 14 chapters in Hosea. So there is hope after divorce. God has experienced that. So there's hope after that. There comes a time where it is necessary. But what would be the attitude of the innocent party? Okay, the attitude, I would say, would be the exact attitude that Joseph had when he was revealed about Mary. Okay, so Joseph is getting married to the love of his life, Mary. He discovers she's with child. Okay, now Joseph, it says he's a just man. He loves God, but he loves Mary. So under Jewish customs, now that she's with child, he's thinking, okay, she's messing around with somebody else. I love her. I don't want vengeance on her, but I love my God. So what do? I love my God, and I love this lady. I found out she's done wrong, so he's contemplating that. He felt he needed to put her away, in essence, but he didn't want to do it vengefully. That's almost how all things work. It's vengeful because you hurt me and I want to hurt you back, or worse than you hurt me. Well, when Joseph was contemplating that through the night, then God came to him in a vision. So God gave him an answer about this difficult situation. And he said, go and marry him. That's going to be my child. Okay, so his attitude was not one of vengeance towards Mary. It was he came to the conclusion that he's going to put her away because the Bible says so. But it does say put her away publicly, which would be a public demonstration of this, would be an embarrassing thing for her. He didn't want to do that because he loved her. So he thought he would put her away to please God, but he would do it privately, not to harm her. Okay, and then God revealed to him what he should do. So when there's a terrible situation and a party's walk with God is being greatly hindered by this, and they've come to the conclusion, I cannot proceed further with this, it's just beyond me, and they're seeking God for guidance, and God will give them direction. Okay, and they've got to have peace about that direction. Not that that's 100%. Some people say, well, I had peace about it. Well, Jonah had peace when he was in the ship running from God too. So that peace is a help, but it's not a guarantee. And so if the party can, Lord, I just don't know what to do in this situation. It's a mess. It's hurting the kids. If there's kids involved, I don't know what to do. Would you give me direction? And then just kind of wait for his direction.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, I'm also just letting you know, if you have any questions for the pastor, by all means, please type them in. I will check them, and we'll go over those as well. So dating and remarriage. So let's say, unfortunately, the counseling doesn't work, and there's no way to repair this relationship. What about remarriage? After a divorce? Is it okay to find love again? I know it's going to be scary for many of you, but is it okay biblically?
Yeah, it is tough the second time around. Sometimes you'll have a rebound, and you don't want that because two wrongs don't make a right. You definitely need to take time on that. Okay, is there a chance for remarriage? That's where the Pharisees step in. Okay, the Pharisees will say, no, never again. You can't do anything for God, blah, blah, blah. Well, if that's the case, then we're going to have to take all of David's writings out of the Bible, because he was divorced, remarried, and murdered somebody. Solomon, well, glory be to God. Solomon never got divorced, but he just had about 300 to 700, 300 wives, or vice versa, 700 wives, 300 concubines. So, well, he never got divorced, but he just added a bunch. Okay, then you got Hosea. Okay, and then, of course, you got God himself. In the Old Testament, a man, or they could get divorced for any reason. Okay, according to Deuteronomy 24. And that was because of the hardness of their heart, because God wants peace in the family, but if he keeps griping about something, the burnt toast, you can't make the man happy. Under the Old Testament, they can divorce for any reason. Once they are divorced, they are two single people, and they can get remarried. Okay, but in Deuteronomy 24, let's say the second marriage doesn't work out for either one, and then they decide, well, we messed up, so we can get back together. Not in the Old Testament. No, that's not allowed. Okay, so that shows that there was, the divorce puts a party into a single, as a single individual. In the New Testament, Jesus raised that to fornication. What's fornication? Okay, 1 Corinthians 5, there's, in the church of Corinth, there's a guy that came into his mother. Okay, is it stepmother, real mother, mother-in-law? Doesn't say, but that's a weird situation. Okay, and that defines fornication. Okay, then you run that back to where that says in the Old Testament, Leviticus 18, there's the definition for fornication. Most, especially the Pharisees, teach that fornication is sex between two single people, and adultery is sex between two married people. That is not true. Fornication is the word for all sex. Okay? Adultery, homosexuality, incest, bestiality, masturbation, so forth and so on. All the sexual things. So fornication is all the birds, where adultery is a specific kind of bird. Okay, where a person can when a person commits adultery, that is fornication. But if they commit fornication, it may not be adultery, because two homos together, two homosexuals, it's not adultery. That's fornication. Okay, and another strange thing in the Bible is that, especially between a man and a woman, is that act is almost a marriage. Okay, I don't want to say it's a complete marriage, but it's right next to it. It is a spiritual marriage where if you have two parties and this one's got 3 demons or devils inside this one, and this one's got 5 devils inside this one, when they make that act, now there are 8 devils involved and they can interact. That's the marriage that takes place. That's why we need to flee fornication. Okay, so that gives an open door. It's like hypnotism. When a person goes to a hypnotist, if that hypnotist has evil intentions, they now have opened a connection to that party. Okay, and so that's why in 1 Corinthians 6 it says flee fornication. So he likens it to marriage is one flesh, but in 1 Corinthians 6 the marriage act is one body. There's this, I don't know of the distinctions there, but it's very, very close. In the Old Testament, it was a marriage. As time progressed, God put more qualifications on it, shall we say? Where, like, he would say, the dad would say, go into the tent and make her your wife. Well, we know they're not in there playing cards. That's the marriage act. Okay, and so when a person steps outside of the marriage of his spouse or her spouse, then now what they're doing is they're being married in spirit to that party. And this is often why when a child, say, is molested as a child, there's devils that go back and forth, and those devils will give the child thoughts. Maybe I'm born this way, maybe this, maybe that, and all that can be cleared out by the blood of Christ. Okay, and so that's why the warning is flee fornication, because you're involving, it's a physical act, but the people are involving a spiritual marriage in there. So if the divorce, I took the scenic route on that, but if the divorce is biblical, say fornication or desertion, 1 Corinthians 7. I mean, the guy just takes off. You in some cases, you kind of wish they would. Okay, then there's room for remarriage. Okay. Now, with that, unfortunately, you got to deal with the Pharisees, people with a pharisaical attitude, and that's why you got to be fully persuaded that this is the direction God's leading you. Now I'm done.
Sure.
No PS.
Well, 2 things that came up to mind.
Okay.
First of all, sin, but let's talk about what about the church's role in some of this too, if they know the abuse is going on. Like, as for myself, when I alerted my pastor and an elder, they offered to pray for me. That was it. Does the church have any what's the word I'm looking for? Any obligation? Thank you.
Obligation on that? Yeah, they do. Here's the problem with it. Okay, if one party comes in and makes an accusation, it's difficult to draw a conclusion on one party. You don't want to say they're lying, but you want to recognize, to do a full investigation, you got to go both sides here. So if it's requested by one party that somebody gets involved, which they need that, because, okay, if the wrong party goes to the offended party, let's say wife to husband, this is a grave offense to me, blah, 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 blah. He does nothing. Now you're asking a second and third party to go to him and make the allegations, see what his react. Now you've got a witness. Okay, and if that person rejects that witness, then you could bring it, say, to the deacons as an authoritative over the church, and then they can try to work with this party. Now, most of the time, the party is going to take off and book out of there because they don't want the responsibility. So that's where a person's got to try to decide, Lord, what do I do? Unfortunately, most churches don't want to do that, don't want to get involved. They want to use the spiritual thing while I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
And that don't, you need more action.
Or God hates divorce, which is what I heard too.
He does, but he did get a divorce too. God hates murder too. And he doesn't like it when kids are abused in a family situation or any situation. In fact, the only thing that I can recall Jesus mentioning an offense and the death sentence was the offense of a child in the New Testament. That's pretty heavy.
It is very heavy.
So when if mom knows things are going on, then man, you got to get out of there. Okay. So again, back to the other thing on fornication. If one party discovers the other party, and in this age, what if they're sodomite? What if they're playing around with animals? You got to get out of there. No questions asked.
Which brings me to my next question, or my last question. Sinning. So let's say you know that this is going on. Perhaps you have to participate. Otherwise, you might be beaten in whatever they act, whether it be drugs, alcohol, sexual deviancy. Maybe you have to have an abortion. What happens when the other party is saved? When, I'm going to say she or he, because men can be abused too.
Yeah.
But what happens then once they leave, or even if they're still in that relationship, what happens to them? Because I know personally, again, that was a big thought in my head. Is God going to hate me now because I just did this? I just witnessed this? What's going to happen?
Okay, if it's forced, bullied, or fear of physical harm, I would say that party that's causing the physical harm is lawfully obligated in God's eyes.
Okay.
So the innocent party is free of that guilt. Okay, an example, in the Old Testament, when say a woman took a vow, and she came and told her husband she took this vow, and he said, that wasn't a good vow, so I'm going to nullify the vow. So he can nullify it. So she's under his headship. He can nullify it, okay? And if she takes the vow and he doesn't nullify it, he's responsible in both cases. Okay, now, when there's abuse going on, physical abuse, and crimes being committed, this is very difficult because the party has been so beat down. How would they get the courage to stand against this bully? That's the difficulty of it. There's a study, you find it online, called Learned Helplessness. And I told you that? Learned Helplessness. It's a very interesting study. And it talks about when you deal with a narcissist or a psychopath or sociopath, where they react abnormally, and you try to figure out, maybe I was wrong the first time, then the second they act, and there's nothing you could do to make this person happy, and so you give up. Learned helplessness. And this is why a lot of women go back to the abuse, because they have learned helplessness. It's a very interesting study, and it gives insight into the struggles that people go through. So ideally, if she can muster up the courage when he's committing a crime, go to the authorities.
Awesome.
No hesitation. Okay, if he's going to rob a bank and he says, "Dear, the Bible says submit to me. I want you to be in a getaway car." If she had the courage, I'd say, "Okay, I'll get in a getaway car, and then while he's inside, and then you get away before he gets in, and he gets nailed." But if he's committing a crime, you're not legally obligated to be an accomplice to that crime.
And that's biblically. Now, legally, if you know this is going on, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes, you will get in trouble.
Yeah. And so if they can muster up the courage and stand against it, report it, and then just try to follow through as best you can. Seek somebody who can help you, to give you encouragement, direction. But sometimes people get so beat down they give up.
I was getting to that point myself, so no, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Definitely. I don't see any questions right now. I might have some a little later that we can address.
Okay.
I can address after this. But so why don't you tell me? I already know, but why don't you tell everybody that's watching here about the services?
Okay. Bible Baptist Church of Rensselaer. We have early Sunday school, 8:15, 9 o'clock church, and then I travel up to Lowell. They have a 10 o'clock Sunday school, 11 o'clock church, and a 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So all of them are verse by verse Bible studies, except for Sunday morning's a topic. Okay, usually some topic that the Lord leads me to preach. The Common Man's Reference Bible is a Bible I put together years ago. I'm going to have the 5th edition printed this year. And
Awesome.
It's a reference Bible that is for the common man. And I look at myself as just a common plowboy raised in a farm. And so it can be found online. Plus, I have a little website called Common Man's Bible Institute where I need to improve and do better in that.
And you do have some YouTubes out there too.
That's what that is, yeah.
That's what
It's on
okay.
YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You do have to improve on it a little bit. I was looking on there. It's like, oh, these are a little dated.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Maybe something like this. That'd be nice.
Yes. So you might see him on a Facebook Live sometime. So you can always click on his name, David Hoffman. Look on Facebook. He's on my friend list. So or private message me if you have any questions for him. Maybe you want to get in contact with him personally. By all means, you're more than welcome to. Just send me a private message. We're going to end the broadcast. Was there any other closing remarks you might have had?
Nope.
Because I think you nailed everything really good.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going to log off, guys, unless you have any other questions for us. Otherwise, we're going to say good night. And thank you for tuning in.
Good night.
Stay safe. I love you. God bless. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Well, okay.